Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Anish Koshi. I teach at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. This is the second of the two modules we have on question formation in the languages of the world as part of the course on grammatical categories in the paper on linguistics. In the previous module on questions, you were introduced to the type of questions generally known as yes-no questions or polar questions. In this particular module, we would like to introduce you to the second major type of questions that is found globally in languages, known as content questions, or based on the phonological relationship between the question words in English, WH questions. In this module, we would like to take you through the different strategies that are found in the derivation of content question words in languages in terms of the relationship that content question words have with other pronouns in the language. We would also like to take you through a discussion of the kind of constituents in a sentence that can be questioned in a language. We would like to also see the kind of shared interrogative processes that exist in languages between content questions and the polar questions. Also take you through the type of questions known as rhetorical questions, and finally conclude with a very important distinction that has been found in languages, that of WH movement and WH in situ. Let us begin. In the previous module on questions, we had said that question formation is one of the most fundamental aspects of human communication and that they are universally found in all human languages. We'd also said that questions are understood as any type of expression that seeks an answer. The answer, we had said, could be more information or just confirmation of a hypothesis. In the previous module, we had looked in detail at the polar questions that seeks confirmation. In this module, we would like to study content questions. You will recollect that we had said that content questions are not those that seek confirmation, but rather more information. In the latter part of this module, we will also discuss another type of question, namely rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions have the structure of an ordinary yes, no or WH question, but they, contrary to our expectations, seek no answer. We will also touch upon some theoretical issues concerning questions that are important when one investigates question formation in languages. You will also see that there is a very clear grammatical relationship between questions and statements in most languages, and the direction of derivation is assumed to be from statements to questions. Content questions, thus, are those which seek information and are therefore answered variously by using a word, a phrase, or an entire clause. Content questions may also use some of the strategies listed in our previous module for polar questions. However, in almost all languages, content questions are formed by a set of separate question words and therefore clearly stand out as questions without having to resort to any other major strategies. However, some of the strategies listed for polar questions, like the use of a different constituent ordering, intonation, or of question particles in the formation of content questions, are also reported. There are generally 8 canonical content question words that are reported. All languages do not have separate forms for all of these. In some languages, they may be formed by combining 2 forms. Look at the table that appears now on your screen, which lists to you content question words from 3 languages: English, an Indo-Aryan language Hindi, and a Dravidian language Malayalam. As can be noticed, the form how many or how much in English is made up of 2 words, whereas they are formed by a single word in the other two languages in the table. Whereas the word for why, which is a single word in English, is represented as two words in Malayalam. Look at the parallel words of the 8 canonical question words that have been reported in languages. They are who, what, why, where, which, how many or how much, how, and when. As you can see, in Hindi, most of these canonical words are represented by a single lexical item. Whereas in Malayalam, while most of them are represented by a single lexical item, the word for why, as we noted earlier, is formed of a two-part constituent. Let us now look at the relationship of content question words with other pronouns in the language. Content question words are often seen to have a very close relationship with other pronouns in the language, like relative pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, and indefinite pronouns. Now, a table appears on your screen that shows to you how most of the question words in English are also used as relative pronouns in the language for the functions indicated against them. This is reported to be quite common in Indo-European languages. Let us look at the table now. So we have a question word who in English. We also have a relative pronoun who, which is used to refer to human subjects. We have a question word whom and a relative pronoun whom, and for the meaning that is indicated in the table. What is a question word in English that does not have a parallel relative pronoun form? But where is used as where, why is used as why, when is used as when, and which is used as which. So both question words and relative pronouns as they exist in English. Is this a phenomena that you find only in English? Not at all. Now look at the table that appears on your screen, which draws a similar parallel between the question words in Malayalam and demonstratives or complementizers in the same language. So we have the parallels, though not exactly the same as in English, but you can very clearly see the phonological connection. So the question word is end, which means what. The demonstrative pronoun is id or other, meaning this or that. The question word is evide, meaning where, and the demonstrative pronoun is ivide or avide, meaning here or there. Look at the other parallels that you can see between question words and demonstrative pronouns or complementizers in Malayalam by giving some time to the table now on your screen. A very similar pattern as noted for English as for Malayalam also exists for Hindi as well. Look at the table now that appears on your screen. The question word and demonstrative pronoun or complementizer are very clearly connected phonologically, though they are not exactly the same as in English, but they are more similar to the ones that we saw for the Dravidian language Malayalam. Look at the question word in Hindi for where, kaha, and the demonstrative here or there is yaha or waha. Look at the question word for how in Hindi, kaise, and the demonstrative is aise or waise. This is how or that is how. Look at the other questions in Hindi. For example, the word for when is kab and the demonstrative or complementizer is ab, now, or tab, then. We see a small set of correspondences between content question words and demonstratives in English as well, which may be surprising to you, but look at now the forms that appear on your screen. You have what as a question and demonstrative that. The question is when, the demonstrative is then. The question is where, the demonstrative is there or here. The question is whither, the demonstrative is thither or hither. The question is whence, and the demonstrative is thence or hence. Content question words in many languages are connected to indefinite pronouns as well. Look at the table that appears now on your screen, which demonstrates this relationship between indefinite pronouns and question words in the Dravidian language Malayalam. So the question word for what is endha, and the indefinite pronoun for something is endengilum. The question word for where is evide, and the indefinite pronoun somewhere is evidengilum. The question word why is endina, and the indefinite for something is endinengilum. The question word for how is engane and the indefinite somehow is enganeengilum. The question word for when is eppor and the indefinite sometime is epporengilum. And the parallels for some from when and for someone from who. Let us now move on to another very interesting aspect as far as content questions are concerned. Now, if you have a sentence, which of the constituents of this sentence can you question? It is important to note that languages may actually differ in terms of which words it allows you to question. One thing that you will not notice is that all and only content words can be questioned. It is not generally possible to question function or grammatical words. Different word classes actually prefer different content question words. That is, the question word used to question a noun differs usually from a question word that questions an adjective or an adverb. We can see this in the examples that appear on your screen now. Different languages may also use different strategies in terms of which of the content words may be subject to questioning. If you look at the sentence that appears on your screen now and look at the two parallel structures, you will notice that English finds it impossible to question the word new from within the subordinate clause. Only the entire clause, because it is new, may be questioned. Whereas Malayalam does not find it very difficult in questioning the equivalent word for new, that is pudhiya, in the parallel structure 2 on your screen. It is suggested in the literature that it is easier to question more constituents in those languages which do not require elements to be moved to sentence initial or any other specific positions. Now, look at the English sentence on your screen. The little boy likes the red car more than the yellow car because it is new. Now, let us try to see which of the constituents of this English sentence can actually be questioned. The table that appears now on your screen is a demonstration of the content questions in English for the different constituents of sentence 1 that you just saw. So you can ask the question, who likes the red car more than the yellow car because it is new? And you get the little boy. What does the little boy like more than the yellow car because it is new? And you can answer the red car. You can also ask, what does the little boy like the red car more than because it is new? And you may answer it as the yellow car. And you may ask the question, why does the little boy like the red car more than the yellow car? And you get the answer, because it is new. You may ask, what is the color of the car that the little boy likes more than the yellow car because it is new? And you say red. You may ask, what is the color of the car that the little boy likes less than the red car because it is new? And you may say yellow. You may also ask, what is the thing that the little boy likes, the red one more than the yellow one because it is new? And you may say the car. Which boy likes the red car more than the yellow car because it is new? And you may say the little boy or the little one. What you will notice is that among the examples that appeared on your screen, sentences 3 to 6 sound normal, whereas sentences 7 to 10 either require certain assumptions within the questions, like the use of the word color in sentences 7 to 8, or cannot be answered without repeating some elements from the question, like in sentences 9 to 10. So if our previous discussion was on which of the constituents can we question from a given sentence, let us now look at another issue that we face with content questions. Languages generally do not have a straightforward way of questioning verbs or even heads of noun phrases. In English, for example, it is easier to question the modifier little in the phrase the little boy by asking which boy than it is to question the head nominal boy you have to go around saying the little what or the little who, and it doesn't sound natural. One has to make assumption about the head noun, like it being a human or an animal, etc., to be able to question it. In Malayalam, in contrast, the same is done by deliberately underassuming the humanness or animacy of the head noun, as in cheriya endana, little what it is. Questioning verbs is, of course, altogether a difficult area. Most languages do not have a straightforward way of doing it, except through expressions like do what in English and its parallels in Hindi like kya kiya, and in Malayalam like endu chedu in its different tensed forms. However, in the literature, we do find mentions of languages that do have dedicated words to question verbs, but it is indeed quite a rare phenomenon. Another very interesting and important aspect to note about content questions across languages is that in almost all languages, they appear in a series, sharing some kind of a phonological element. This is true, especially with respect to the sounds with which a majority of them begin. In English, we have a majority of them beginning with the sequence WH, who, what, when, where, which, etc., which has led to many scholars using the term WH words for content question words in all languages, and also calling the process of content question formation as WH question formation. In Malayalam, you would note that the majority of content question words begin with the sound A, in the, everyday, and the like, and in Hindi with K, kaun, kaise, kab, etc. Even though this is a very interesting facet, no clear explanations exist in the literature as to why this is so. Linguists speculate that it may point to some kind of a common origin for all question words in the language. This source is, however, lost for all languages. Even in languages where there are correspondences, as we noted, between the content question words and other pronouns in the language, it is generally accepted that it is not the question words which are derived from the pronouns, but rather that the pronouns are derived from the question words, leaving the question of why question words all share this common phonological element still unanswered. Now, this leads us to another question with respect to content questions. Do all languages have content question words which are independent existing words like we saw for Hindi or for Malayalam or for English? We also know that languages may also use compositional forms to represent content question words. In such languages, the actual question bases may be very few, and different morphological strategies may derive the appropriate question word. In the examples that we now have on your screen from the Austroasiatic language Pnar spoken in Meghalaya, we see that there are two bases which are used frequently in the formation of questions, the base E and the base 1. Look at the table carefully. You will see also that as far as these questions are concerned, they also seem to demonstrate the Austroasiatic propensity to not have very strict distinctions between word classes. With the availability of morphological gender as well, we see that the forms used for who and what, used for human and non-human in English, and which, used for adjectives in English, can be structurally the same. The markers u, ka, ki or e that you find before the two interrogative bases e and 1 are morphological gender markers and stand for masculine, feminine, plural and epicene respectively. Look at the table carefully. The question word for what could be ui, kai, ki or ii. The question word for where can be chaiwan, naiwan, haiwan. The question word for how is kamwan. The question word for when is katwan. The question word for which is ui uwan, kai kawan, ki kawan, E, E1. The question word for who is we or kai or ki or e, depending on the knowledge that the speaker possesses about the gender of the entity that is being questioned. Another very interesting and important aspect for us to know about content questions is the possibility of whether multiple constituents of a sentence can be questioned at the same time. In our previous discussion, we just saw that there are different constituents of a sentence that can be questioned. But the issue that we are asking now is whether we can question multiple constituents at the same time. And you would be surprised that while languages allow different constituents to be questioned, they are seen to generally not allow multiple constituents to be questioned in one sentence. Therefore, the appearance of multiple content question words in one sentence is in general very rare. A workaround that many languages employ is to use conjunctions as in the sentences that now appear on your screen. The conjunctions are understood to be joining clauses and each with its own content question with the part of the clause repeated, elided. Look at the English sentences on your screen now. Where are you going tomorrow and when? Of course, we can end the sentence with when, but what it actually means is where are you going tomorrow and when are you going tomorrow? Or the other sentence, where are you going tomorrow and how are you going tomorrow? Of course, in spoken form, we elide the part that is repeated. Another very important aspect to note about content questions is the morphological operations that happen around them, especially the interaction of content question words with case markers. It is noted that question words may also come with the case markers of the constituents that they replace. In languages where the question word is moved to the front of the sentence, such markers may also move to the front. In Hindi, for example, the distinction between the two forms of who and whom is kaun and kis. And the form kis may be variously followed by different case or postpositional markers like kisse, kisne, kisko, kis par, kiske liye, kisme, etc. In English, this is seen with prepositions like for or with, for whom, with whom, etc. These may be moved to the front of the sentences depending on language internal practices and principles. Another type of question that is seen in almost all languages is rhetorical questions. These are questions that have no answers or expect no answers. They mostly fulfill pragmatic purposes. They may also use a different intonation from the canonical questions. In English, for example, while polar questions are said with a rising intonation and content questions are said with a falling intonation, all rhetorical questions, whether they have the shape of a polar question or content questions, are said with a falling intonation. Greetings, in the form of questions like how are you, are generally rhetorical, though some societies may expect that the answer to these be provided truthfully. The following polar question said with a falling intonation is perceived as a rhetorical question and therefore not answered. Pay attention to how the polar question sounds like and how the rhetorical question sounds like. The polar question, can he ever come on time? And the rhetorical question, can he ever come on time? Now let us look at some shared interrogative processes. We have languages where the different question types, the polar and the content types, share many grammatical features to convey what may be called an interrogative process. An example of this can be seen in Coasity, a Muscogean language. In Coasity, both polar and content questions are marked by the infixation of a certain element, a sound, and the use of a high pitch on both parts of the infixed root. In Malayalam too, we find that the particle or clitic aanu or ano used both in polar and content questions as a strategy for focusing the attention of the listener to a particular constituent. You can see the Malayalam examples now on your screen. In the polar questions, do you like blue shirts? നിനക്ക് നീല ഉടുപ്പ് ഇഷ്ടമാണോ? Are you the one who likes blue shirts? നിനക്കാണോ നീല ഉടുപ്പ് ഇഷ്ടം? Or focusing on the shirt, you can have the question നിനക്ക് നീല ഉടുപ്പാണോ ഇഷ്ടം? Now, we may also want to focus on the color blue and say നിനക്ക് ഉടുപ്പ് നീലയാണോ ഇഷ്ടം? The same ano or an can be used for content questions as well in Malayalam for the same purpose and the strategy of focusing. So who likes blue shirts? Aarkanu neela uduppu ishtam? Which shirt do you like? Ninakku edu uduppu aanu ishtam? Or to ask among shirts, which one do you like? Ninakku uduppu edanu ishtam? In English too, both polar and content question types require a similar strategy of subject-auxiliary inversion. While polar questions begin with the auxiliary, in content question, the question word is immediately followed by the auxiliary verb. Look at the examples now on your screen. So you have a sentence, a declarative statement. John refused to answer the policeman. Look at the polar question. Did John refuse to answer the policeman? And then the WH question, who did John refuse to answer? The last important issue that we want to discuss in our module is the difference we find in languages with movement and languages which are in situ. Languages may differ in terms of how to focus on a particular element or constituent while asking a question. English prefers to move the constituent, more specifically the question word that replaces the constituent, to the front of the sentence. Many languages like Hindi and Malayalam do not require any movement of constituents to form content questions or to focus on a constituent. Instead, in languages like Malayalam, a question particle or clitic is attached to the constituent that is to be focused. In general, polar questions in Malayalam are formed by encliticizing this clitic to the verb, which is usually the final element in the sentence. In languages like Malayalam, a question particle or clitic is attached to the element that is to be focused. In general, polar questions in Malayalam are formed by cliticizing O, as you saw in the examples earlier. English also requires the support of an auxiliary verb after the moved question word. If no auxiliary is present, it makes use of the dummy verb do. Focusing of constituents in English, as pointed out in our previous module, may require movement of that constituent to a focus position in the sentence. Languages which do not require their question word constituents to move are known as WH in situ languages. And languages like English that need to move their question words or constituents are known as languages with WH movement. Let us now briefly summarize the important points that we have taken up in this module. Continuing our discussion on questions from our previous module, we have looked into the type of questions known as content questions in greater detail in this module. We noted how in many languages content questions use separately available content question words to form questions. However, they may also share certain interrogative processes common with the formation of polar questions. We also took a brief look at another type of questions known as the rhetorical questions, which are beyond the issue of whether the question seeks information or confirmation. And finally, we ended our discussion with an important typological distinction that exists in languages between languages like English that require that the WH words always appear in the beginning of a sentence, and languages like Hindi and Malayalam that do not require the WH words to move to the front of a sentence and merely replace and appear in the place of the very constituent they question. To know more about content questions, we encourage you to read the e-text available on this module in the UGC EPG Pathshala. Look at the examples more carefully, think about the same sentences in your own mother tongue, and try to understand the system of content questions in your language. Thank you.